Full house. Please? I don't know. Okay, thank you.
I don't know either.
Good evening. Welcome to the October 5th, 2020 Elyria City Council. At this time, I'd ask everyone to stand up for a moment of reflective silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Callahan.
Here.
Mr. Sierra.
Here.
Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mr. Baird.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Tollett.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mrs. Keys.
Here.
Mr. Jesse.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
All present.
Public hearings?
You are hereby notified that a public hearing will be held Monday, October 5th, 2020 at 7 p.m. during a live stream Elyria City Council meeting to consider the following. An ordinance granting a conditional use permit pursuant to Chapter 1135 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, to K. Hovian Homes for residential planned unit development at real property located on Southwood Drive and Indian Hollow Road, Elyria, Ohio.
Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents?
Hello, my name is Dale. Hey,
Go ahead, Dale.
Go ahead, sir.
yes, I'm here on behalf of K. Hovnanian Homes to request a rezoning for residential planned unit development for the property referenced in the ordinance. It's 88 acres. And the proposal is for 230 lots. If the council has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Mr. Haywood? Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? I declare this public hearing have been held.
An ordinance granting a conditional use permit pursuant to Chapter 1135 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, to K. Hovian Homes for a residential planned unit development at real property located on Southwood Drive and Indian Hollow Road, Elyria, Ohio.
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its third reading.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Questions have been called. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2020-134. That's all the public hearings?
Remarks and reports from city officials. Mayor Whitfield.
The mayor will be right back. I don't think he thought we were going to get through that item that quickly, so he'll be right back.
Up to you. Director Firestein.
At this point, I have no report, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions any of you might have.
Yes, Director Firestein, in regards to the hockey club. You and I had spoke the other day regarding an update on that and where things were at. I know they're looking to move forward with the use of the ice. I think that timeline was either the 10th or the 11th, I think is what days were scheduled, and I think they're probably looking for some direction, and I know, can you expand about where we're at with that?
Yes, through the chair to members of council, I've been in constant contact with members of the hockey club as working through them, with them. We went through a walkthrough on Thursday, just kind of get their thoughts on the walkthrough and the flow of the ice hockey rink, because they've been to a few different rinks throughout the area just to see if what we were thinking was correct, incorrect, and kind of get their input as well to make sure that we keep them safe and keep our employees safe. They really appreciated that. They walked through. They thought what we had in place was very well done, and it was not just myself. It was members of the team there as well that would be working there on a daily basis with them, making sure that it was done, and they were able to ask questions of both the hockey club as well as our employees, and making sure there's good dialogue there. The secretary for Parks and Rec provided me the contract, or not the contract, but the license agreement that they have used in the past. I've updated that and will be sending that for them to sign here in the next day or so. The goal is to have them, the first day of ice use is going to be for Saturday, October 10th. That's been the goal since they've been talking about that. I believe that we're going to be ready for that. Part of that license agreement will be the COVID guidelines that we've put in place, and a lot of it came from their feedback. I know Councilman Tellez has talked about their plan, and a lot of that was used and implemented on that. So there's been some great dialogue, and the hope is that they can teach us a few things, making sure that we have that facility ready to operate, as well as then opening it up for open skate for our residents come November, just as how we've had it in the past.
So then, can you give us the setup as far as what, from our city employees, how that will be, what they will be doing with the COVID and the system that's set up in place? Is it something that's similar to what was in place before and then those employees who were in the system before back and using that and running the Zamboni and opening the doors and keeping a mindful eye of what's going on? That's all going to be in place?
Through the council president to members of council, yes, that is in place. Instead of having one session end and the next session start, we're having a half hour in between sessions to making sure that we have people exit the building, we sanitize, the Zamboni will run if it needs to, and talking with younger hockey age groups, you don't always have to run the Zamboni. When you have the older groups, you have to. So we've been working on that. We believe that that's a good setup. We're going to have at least a minimum of two employees there while the teams are there, making sure that when families come through the front door, after a certain point in time, that door will be locked. When they go into the arena, we'll start the sanitizing of that area then. That way we can kind of get a head start. Then as the practice is ending, the Zamboni is going out there, the other employees going and sanitizing the area. We have one entrance, one exit for the families, and then the hockey players, if they're old enough to put their skates on themselves, will come in through that back north door, and then being there, that way there's one way in, one way out. That way they can hit the ice right away and maximize the amount of time they need for the ice. We walked through that last Thursday with the team, and we believe that that's a good setup, and we're going to fine tune it as we go through, but we believe that that's the right setup as we get started.
Then how does that hold true for the hockey teams? Because it's a different entity that's coming over and through. It seems like the hockey club maybe have a system in place, a COVID. Is that the same system in place for them as well?
When you say teams, are you speaking about the high school teams?
High school teams, yes.
Same process. They'll be asked to agree to that same process. What it is there's a coach responsibility, and then each team will have a COVID monitor to help us kind of keep track of players as they come in. And right now it's just practices, so we won't be having a lot of teams come in. We might have some games a little bit later on in the year, but at least in the first month or so, it's mainly just practices, and we feel very confident we can handle that.
And then I just want to make sure that I understand, is there a physician that's on and when all this happens, like if there's practices and what happens if there's an accident of any sort? Has that ever been in the system of play? I'm not really sure. I just want to clarify if there's an incident.
I mean, at least through the president of council and members of council, to my knowledge, there will be no physician. I'm not sure if that's been in place before, but it will be up to the coach's responsibility to report anything and make sure they get the proper care that is needed.
Okay.
But I could look into that.
Very good. Council's members want to weigh in. Ms. Davis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I heard that right. Did he say someone other than one of the park employees was going to run the machine?
No, through President of Council to members of Council, absolutely not. It will always be a city employee running the Zamboni. It will not be a volunteer or member of any of the clubs. It will be a city employee running that Zamboni. It was never a thought to have that done otherwise or in any other way.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this city employee, is this someone who have knowledge of running that equipment?
Yes, we met with them about 2 weeks ago. We will bring back the same gentleman that was there last year on a part-time basis, and he will be running it. And then we had a meeting last week to look at other additional part-time hires to bring them on to making sure we had the appropriate staff. Director Brubaker and staff met with some other members to hire them and come back. So we've looking at making sure we have the roster filled, making sure we have the appropriate people in place. But it will be someone that is experienced in running it. Believe me, you won't want me on that Zamboni cutting that ice, so it would not be me.
I hope you understand.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So did I understand you correctly? You're bringing part-time employees in to monitor the ice rink?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else regarding the ice rink? Okay, is there an update on the Horizon Schools contract? Is that still in play if the law director or the safety service director?
Through President of Council, I did refer that. I provided the previous contract, and I know Law Department has been working on a revised license agreement, and let Law Director Deary speak.
Through you, Mr. President, my understanding this matter will be going to committee. I believe it's the next Utility, Safety, and Environment Committee meeting. Still obviously need what I call the guts to put into place in the contract, but that's kind of can be done at the last minute as far as dates, times, person, place, thing. But once there's authorization from council to move forward, and we have the details hammered out, then we would be able to move forward with that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to kind of keep up to date on things where many discussions have been had. Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, Mr. Firestein, so when will open skate start for the residents?
We're looking in the early part of November. Just like similar to the calendar that had been used in previous years, that's kind of what we were hoping for. So we're hoping to use the first half of or the second half of October, kind of get things worked out, and then utilize that for open skate guidelines as we move forward. And we're trying to figure out capacity, and we know a lot of people like to congregate when they go there, and we're going to try to make sure that they're there to skate, not congregate, because right now having people congregate is not the best thing for them, but we are working on that. The goal was get the ice rink open, get the teams that are there get to utilize at the beginning, and then refocus our efforts on making sure it's a safe open skate for the community to enjoy.
Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Mr. President, is this going to be open 5 days or 7 days? They were talking about doing tournaments in the 7 days. Is that something that will come on down the road, or how many days are open right now? Can you explain that?
To the President and members of Council, right now the goal is to have it open Tuesday through Sunday. We leave it closed on Monday for a complete deep clean, making sure we go through that. As the year moves on, if we feel confident that we can do it differently, but right now that's the guidelines that we wanted to go with. We've communicated that with the teams as well as the hockey club, and they seemed okay. And then so looking at that schedule, we knew that we could also include open skate in the months of November and going forward. So we feel that's a good schedule, but as we fine tune it and get better at what we do, that leaves a possibility of possibly going open on Monday.
Any questions? Other questions for the Safety Service Director? Mayor Whitfield?
Nothing to report.
Finance Director?
Thank you, Council President. Today we completed the September income tax report and distributed that to Council. So when you take a look at that report, you'll see that income tax collections from January 1 through September 30 are down 4.03% as compared to January 1 of 2019 through September 30 of 2019. That's a drop of $987,363. So ordinarily, I would tell you that's the bad news of the night, but that's actually the better of the two news items that I have for you. So keeping that in mind, the October 1st distribution from the Regional Income Tax Agency was down 40.37% as compared to October 1st, 2019 distribution. That's a drop of $820,677. So in one distribution, we practically doubled our downfall in income tax revenues. So the concerning thing about this 40.37% drop is that most of it is withholding tax. And it's spread across several companies. And, you know, we were thinking maybe it was a timing issue, but it involves several companies, and they're all down from when you compare their distribution from last October. So we'll get another distribution on the 15th of October. Hopefully will bounce back a little bit, but $820,000 drop in one distribution is pretty large. So it just shows you that we're not done. The pandemic is still having a very profound negative effect on the economy, and I'm not sure when it will turn around.
Any questions for the Finance Director? Thank you, Mr. Pileski. Law Director Deary?
I have no report tonight, Mr. President.
Chief White, Elyria Police Department. Chief Mack, Elyria Fire Department.
Good evening. I have two things tonight through you, Mr. President. One is this is Fire Safety Week. Even though the fire department doesn't have a fully functional public education department, we do try to recognize it, and the mayor's staff did assist us with making sure that things are on the city website as well as on the fire department website. During this week, we remind everyone that in 2020, the theme is to serve up fire safety in the kitchen, and the focus is on the fact that home fires, the number one cause of a home fire is unattended cooking. So that's the focus of 2020. There are events, there are things that are listed on the calendar, so if anybody'd like to see that, it's available on the city website. And then secondly, I just wanted to share, we received a group of cards today from the juvenile court. One of the projects they had to do was be involved with the community, and they had written us some cards that were titled Thinking of You. And I had one that stood out that I really wanted to share. It said, "Thank you for all that you do to protect and serve the community, and may you always have someone looking out for you like you do others. Thank you from someone who cares." And I thought this was really nice and appropriate because really for us at the fire department, the people that are sitting in the council chambers are really the people that are looking out for us on a daily basis. And I thought this was quite appropriate and just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Jesse?
Through you, Mr. President. Chief, I know you know this, but I didn't get a chance to share it with all of my colleagues, but I met with the Firefighters Union Thursday night, and they made a very generous donation to the Issue 6 Fund, and I just would like to recognize that for the record.
Thank you, Councilman Jesse. I know that we're very appreciative of you reaching out to them, and as always, anytime they can see somebody from the city, from council, stopping by in a fire station or saying hi, they really do appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions more for Chief Mack? Thank you, Chief. Engineer Schneider?
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll have a list of projects we're still working on out there. Hard to believe it's already October, but A number of projects are still under construction. Hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll have a lot of them winding down to a lot less going out there. The Ely Park Fountain project, the brickwork has been completed. The capstone, they put the capstone on, and then they found out they mismeasured 2 of the capstones. So unfortunately, we're still waiting for 2 capstones to be placed out there on the fountain. It's pretty much the only thing that's really we need to get to complete the project. Everything else is on site to be taken care of. They do have the plaques are ready to go into the wall. They have the benches made. They're stored off-site and things of that nature. But and the sand to go in between the bricks. But unfortunately, the capstones, there was a mismeasurement out there, so we're still waiting on 2 of them to be made. Should have them within a week. They don't take that long. They did measure them right away. They started making them. It's just a matter of waiting for the concrete to set up so they can move them. So they should be made already and just curing right now. The Chestnut Commons Connector Drive, the contractor was working on the asphalt out there at the Walmart today. So they have most of it completed out there. Tomorrow they're hoping to shift the traffic out there. So just so people know, when the intent, probably about noonish, they're going to change the traffic so you'll be driving on the new road to go to Walmart. We still have some more work to do around the entrance that's in the northern part. As you drive in, due north and a little bit to the east. So they're going to disrupt the way people were going in. So they'll shift them over to the new drive. So you will see people driving over there tomorrow. That they've also started doing the work. They'll be doing more work than on Broad Street later on this week. So they pretty much should have almost everything complete except for the traffic light, the permanent traffic light. We do have a temporary traffic light that they're installing. That project really came together really well. They do, obviously, there's still minor little things out there they have to complete, landscaping. Most of the grass is growing out there, but we have some plants in the islands of Walmart that we have to do. Sorry, it's hard to breathe in this thing. East Avenue, St. Mary's Way improvement project. Contractor has completed almost all the underground work out there. They're working on the curbing around the library, the sidewalk, the new sidewalk. So they had a meeting today with the library contractor to work out the particulars there as far as elevations and everything goes. So within the next 2 weeks, I could see that project pretty much wrapping up. There might be a couple odds and ends out there, but the roadway should be opened. Phase 1 of the street resurfacing, all the streets have been milled on that project. 4 of the 18 have had asphalt put down. They were out there doing asphalt today, and actually I believe on Saturday. So they are moving forward. They believe they'll have all the asphalt down by the end of next week. So it's just a matter of getting the manholes and catch basins readjusted, paint markings and sidewalks completed and signage. So that contractor is moving along. Phase 2 of the street resurfacing, all the asphalt work is completed. The contractor's still working on sidewalks and adjustments. He's about halfway done with that. So not too much longer, and that project will be complete. The Abbey Road South resurfacing, all the asphalt on that roadway has been completed. Once again, the contractor is just working on pavement markings and manholes and catch basins adjustments. So that should be a lot better than it was. West River Road water main and sewer project from Lake Avenue to State Route 57. Contractor's got a lot of the water main in, about half of the water main in right now. He's actually at 5 points right now. So they are moving along. Same contractor as the Chestnut Commons Connector, just so you know. So they are moving along, knocking out that project right now. Tomorrow, you'll probably see some flaggers out there in that intersection. So that intersection is going to be kind of congested. Traffic pattern will change a little bit over the next couple of days as far as how to get people through there. So bear with us while the contractor completes the water main through that intersection. the east side leaf sewer. I did misspeak, I guess, the last council meeting about the pipe work. We have about 60 feet more to go. The contractor has started the restoration work out there in Bon Air. So they are moving along, trying to get the road restored. There's a lot of restoration that has to be completed for that. It's probably going to take about another month to finish all that work. So I guess with that, I don't know if council has any questions regarding any of the projects we have going on right now.
Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President. I had an issue that we've been discussing on the top of the hill of Gulf Road by the Country Club, just before you get to Whitman. And thanks to Chief Whiteley and Fran Ross, we were able to pinpoint when the exact accident occurred because they knocked a guardrail, which was a very expensive guardrail where when you hit them, it uncoils. It's supposed to be one of the real safety, and I'm hearing that they're very expensive to fix. What I was tracking down was trying to find a person that hit it so we could get our insurance money so we can pay for it to get it taken care of. After they did the research, we find a date. We found out that the person that hit that was a lady that had her warrant out for arrest. She does not have insurance. Screwed Elyria. So now we have a very ugly, uncoiled guardrail sitting at the top of Gulf Road that we all have to drive past every day. And knowing that we don't really have $10,000 or $15,000 to fix this, but what are we supposed to do? Are we going to just leave it like that for the rest of our lives, or are we going to be able to try to sneak some money out or find money? And what I've been into for the last couple of years trying to find out, which I was told that we never find out who hits these telephone poles or our property lights or guardrails, so we never collect any money. Well, some of them we probably are, but it's been throwing into the general fund. And I keep saying the thing, if I hit that guardrail and they charge my insurance company, I'd be driving by to make sure that that thing was taken care of, but it may not because it goes into the general fund. I want to make sure that these things are taken care of, find the people that are doing it, and we're going to do a little more research to see if we can get the money going in the right fund to get some of these things taken care of. And then the question, which may be a stupid question, but we have uninsured motorists. Does the city have some kind of an insurance that by chance, if your insurance company doesn't pay for it, does our insurance company kick in? Or is it a very high deductible? I don't know, but I guess I'm just asking a question. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Ms. Deary.
Through you, Mr. President. Mr. Oswald, it is true that, yes, it is very difficult to collect in these situations for many, if not all the reasons that you stated. Number one, oftentimes these are hit and run situations whereby the time that law enforcement shows up, the perpetrator is long gone. If we do catch up with the person, not surprisingly, these people often have no driver's license, have no insurance, lack enough insurance to cover. But I will assure members of council and members of the public that we do, in fact, pursue restitution in all these matters in court. Unfortunately, and I've always despised this old adage, but you don't get blood from a turnip. That never made sense to me before I took this job, but it's starting to make some sense. We get what's called a judgment against somebody, but if there is nowhere to get the money, especially with people who do not have proper insurance, we do not see the money. There are steps we can take, such as putting blocks on people's driver's licenses, things like that. But again, if somebody was already driving with a suspended license, then that may not be much of an incentive for someone to pay. But I can assure you that we do work very closely with myself and the law director's office staff, with the Elyria Police Department, with Highway Patrol, to track down people who take out various fixtures within the city limits, or as I put it, people who break our stuff, whether it's a fire hydrant, guardrails, light poles. I, like you, I had no idea how expensive a guardrail was. I figured they weren't cheap, but I had no idea what the price tag was on one of those because thankfully I never had to be handed a bill for one personally. But you're right, it is definitely a daunting task and often a very frustrating one.
Mr. Sarah?
Through you, Mr. President, back to the Big Dig or East Side Relief. I see they're at or past the intersection of Longfellow and Poplar. How long is Abbey Road going to remain closed? Through the road restoration, or is that going to be opening up anytime soon?
That would be through the restoration, so it would take about a month.
So we're going to be into November?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you.
Assistant Safety Service Director Brubaker sitting in the back. All right, President's referrals and remonstrances. Item number 1, Community Development. Item number 2, Finance. Item number 3, Finance. Item number 4, Utilities. Petitions and remonstrances from council members.
There are none.
Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby.
There's one, Mr. Larry Klipstein, 959 Oakwood Drive, on various topics.
Mr. Klipstein. Name and address for the record, please.
Larry Klipstein, 959 Oakwood Drive, Elyria, Ohio. I had several things I want to talk about, but I think the biggest sticking point of this council meeting this evening is the Parks Director. This reminds me of an army that has a bunch of soldiers and no general. You have this army going into war, but there's no general to make the plans. I heard the Safety Service Director talk about all this stuff at the ice rink. That's a Parks Director job. It's not the Safety Service Director job. You have other things to do. You distributed the Parks and Recreation stuff throughout the system here. I believe Mr. Brubaker does stuff. Other people do stuff. It's not just the director's job that needs a bunch of stuff to do at that moment. There's a bunch of stuff to do leading up to the programs. You have contacts. You have all the other information you've done over the years to keep these parks a gem in Elyria. Right now, the gem is turning into a piece of coal because you don't have anybody directing the Parks and Recs. Even if you say there's not enough work to do, I disagree. Work doesn't happen on point when programs begin. You have to work everything up into those programs. There's all kinds of things you have to prepare for. You have to have medical staff, you have to have regulations, you have to get all the programs situated. There's people to sign up people, there's program directors to run things. You can't just wait till the last minute when you have 10 programs and say, okay, here's our director, get busy. You have to look forward into the future. I mean, these parks mean a lot to Elyria, and the rec centers mean a lot. We can't use them because there's no one to direct anything. We just have to sit back and wait. Also, with issue 6 coming up, a big thing with issue 6 is money for Parks and Recs. Where is the money now? We don't have a Parks and Recs. We don't have a director. We don't have programs. So where's the money coming in from issue 6 and additional money if it gets passed? Again, it's not a guarantee. If it gets passed, where's the money now? Where's the money for Parks and Recs going? There's a bunch of money sitting out there with no programs. So I feel that this council and the mayor and the administration need to get together, set up a Parks Director the way it should be. You have people now on your staff that don't have work to do all the time, but yet they're planning the future. So we need a Parks Director now to plan the future of Elyria Parks, because if not, there'll be no parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klipstein.
Through you, Council President, I'd like to respond to that.
Sure.
So thank you for that, Larry. And there's a couple things I want to kind of add some context to. So when we first decided back in May, and we got the news that, hey, we're facing a $2.7 million deficit, we looked across the board at where could we find savings at. And, you know, one of our commitments as a team was to make sure our parks continue to get managed and maintained. So we created a new team. We created a team that consisted of building and lands. We created a team that consisted of some of the park staff and other folks who had experience maintaining public property. So we created this team, and throughout the whole summer, under the leadership of Assistant Safety Service Director Brubaker and that team, they've made sure that all the Issue 6 projects have continued to move forward. So that's why we saw trails still getting built. We saw playgrounds still getting built. We saw splash pads still being operated. We saw things still being sanitized and taken care of. In regards to the lack of work in the programmatic side of things, that's where a parks director or not, some of these decisions are decisions that we are making as a team, whether that person was in place or not. So for instance, the basketball hoops. I got a lot of heat about why isn't the basketball hoops up, but you're doing these other pieces. That has nothing to do with the director. That's a call that we felt the safest thing was to not have basketball hoops and not create an environment where the virus would be spreading around on on the basketball court. So that had nothing to do with the director. Now that we're in this place of starting to entertain the thought of going back into some sense of normalcy, I just want to make sure I remind folks, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. Like, this isn't over. It's not like we can oh yeah, let's put the schedule out, let's go back to how things were, let's bring the director back. That's not where we are, and that's not where we should be. I mean, I think some people are at the place of, yeah, let's just go back to the way things were. But our philosophy and strategy right now is to slowly going back into programming, so there won't be here's 10 programs, figure it out. The part of the reason for the town hall on Monday is to really get feedback from the community of, what do you feel comfortable with right now? What do you feel comfortable participating in? Because even if we offer the programs but people don't feel comfortable participating in them, then again, that's a waste of money and a waste of time. So getting that genuine feedback from folks on what they're interested in participating in, what they're willing to do, and then can we do it safe? So I just want to encourage us that, hey, and in terms of managing and leading my team, I make sure that, that their time is being spent wisely. Yes, we have divided some of the work, but we literally put that calendar for the first quarter for the first quarter of next year, based on last year's calendar, which included volleyball, soccer, basketball, archery, and ice skating. We put that calendar together in 2 days. So then once that calendar is done, then what? So again, our goal is, again, not to waste city resources, not to waste people's time, and not to take staff people on this roller coaster ride where if we see another peak and we have to shut things back down. Now, I just played with somebody's family's livelihood. I brought them back for a couple of weeks, virus kicks back up, sorry, you're back at it. Or a year from now, maybe based on this finance report, it might be even sooner, when we start to look at the financial implications and figure, all right, where are we going to save money at? These hard decisions have to happen. But I'm proud of how the team has really stepped up. This new team that has been managing all of our facilities, how they've stepped up. I'm proud of how Derek has stepped up, how Kevin has stepped up. And I'm managing to the point of when I feel like they can't handle it anymore, we'll bring somebody in to carry the load. I'm constantly monitoring my team to see, hey, is this too much on you? Do you have too much on your plate? And I've had council people sit in those rooms while I'm directly asking them, is it too much on your plate? And they feel like they handle it. And I think you saw the safety service director tonight show how thorough he is and how committed he is and how he's making sure we're doing things safe. So we got the same pushback when we made the initial decision. People said parks is gone forever, parks will be closed off, they won't be taken care of. You saw parks cut, you saw projects moving forward. So I'm just saying, give us a chance to do our job, and if we start failing at that, then I would be willing to look at other options. But give us a chance to do our job. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
But in saying that, Mayor, I can tell you right now that Director Reardon, while she was laid off, was helping out directing those programs and directing those applications to do that. And don't tell me that it wasn't, because it was the case. I talked to her personally.
What's the case, Councilman?
That she was over there helping the Parks Department employees help with their contracts, with these equipment that is being built over there. She wrote the grant for the Washington grant, or helped be a part of that Washington grant while she was unemployed.
So we actually looked into that. We don't have to debate that here in a public forum, but we did.
No, we will debate it, because it's important for this committee and this council to understand the importance of a park director. These guys are getting stretched out way too thin.
Ask them that. This is they're right here. Ask
Okay,
them.
well, I'm gonna tell you what else happened, because the TASER grant got dropped that we did for the Elyria Police Department because it was referred at the last minute. That's a huge grant out of the Issue 6 funds. That is priority. That's why you have an Elyria Parks Director to run the program.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying, Councilman Stewart. I think I agree what you're saying to an extent in terms of some of these dynamics that people are spending their time on could be managed by an individual, period. I think, but my point being, and to be totally frank with you, to spend an $80,000 salary on somebody doing some of these things, I think is just a little excessive. Now, if there was a part-time role to be able to come back in and do some of these, I would be willing to entertain it.
But we're paying her now.
But we're getting reimbursed from the CARES like any unemployment that we're paying. So
But that doesn't make,
go ahead, please continue.
Mr. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you. I'm not even sure where to begin, so I'm going to start from the beginning. The other day, Councilman Baird and I sat in your office, and you told us that everybody was doing fine. Well, I called one of the Parks employees after that meeting, and I said, "Are you doing fine?" He said, "I'm not doing fine." In that meeting, you deferred to Safety Service Director Firestein. You said, "Let him talk about it." And Derek, with all due respect, you just talked about safety. You in no way addressed the workload on you. So that's one thing. Second thing is, we're all concerned about safety, but every community around here has found a way to responsibly bring programs back. Did you have a chance to call the city of Aurora's?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. So thank you. And also, every other cities also have basketball hoops up, but we don't. So we're not just doing what other folks are doing.
I don't care about one thing on basketball hoops.
But that's what you're bringing up, that other cities are doing something, so why aren't we? So I looked at basketball and saw that's a high-risk activity. Though other communities may be allowing it, I don't think that's safe for our residents to do, so let's keep the hoops down.
Well, that's fine on basketball, but you talk about, the other day in that meeting too, very insulting, I thought, you said it's not rocket science running the parks. And I think that's very insulting to the job that our directors have done over the years and to the job that Director Reardon has done.
And to clarify.
You talk about, let me finish, please.
Okay, yes.
You talk about finances, and in the budget the size of the cities, you're talking about an $85,000 salary is a drop in the bucket, and we have money from COVID to cover that.
Yeah, so to the latter point around finances, so we've created a culture here within the city that everybody is working hard. And I think that's one of my pushbacks was that, hey, everybody in the city is working, stepping up, doing extra duty. And that if the culture aspect of hiring someone that it doesn't have a lot of work to do at a premium salary, to me, is also contrary to the culture. Now, to clarify my statement about the rocket science, I said it wasn't rocket science to create a schedule. I said that I would never be able to do the work Jay Hordale does. I would never be able to understand how to run an ice rink, and that the folks we have on this team, I would never be able to replace. And if one of them was laid off, we'd have to bring them back. That's exactly what I said. And I said, once we reach that point where we feel like we can't handle it, then we'll entertain that. But I think that, this same pushback I got about the fountain, there was steadfast about the fountain. It was steadfast about other issues. And I'm just at the point where I'm saying, let's just work together to move the city forward. And when we start dropping balls, like Councilman Stewart, I appreciate you calling that piece out on the grants. Once we start, misstepping or I don't think we will, but I feel like once we start misstepping, then we'll look at, all right, we need to build capacity. But right now, you just heard a finance report that shows that we're coming up on difficult times. So I'm really interested in hearing from council, when we reach those difficult times, where do you want to start seeing cuts? When we have to make cuts, where would you like to see them? Because we chose not to cut police and fire. We came up with $2 million worth of savings without laying off any of our first responders. So where would you like to see those savings?
That's not a conversation for today. The conversation,
yes, it is.
no, the conversation for today. Whoa. The conversation for today is when we were in the midst of totally unknown financial considerations. We laid off 3 people, one of them retired. So on the entire city, the only people that got laid off were the parks director and 1 full-time person. So we're talking about
But that's not all the changes we made. We saved, and you can just get this information from the finance director of how much savings we've made from the changes we've made in May. That was not, just because those 3 were the only one laid off, doesn't mean the rest of the city didn't step up, do 2 jobs. I think the chief of police is here with the police department, how they've adjusted. And I think it is fair because I think it's in context, to bring it into context of what we're talking about. There's a full financial picture, there's a full pandemic picture, and this person, we can't treat this as an isolated thing. They're like, hey, you know, she's on an island by herself. No, this is a broader picture, and we're trying to figure out how long-term do we even support our parks. And so we're thinking about, can this parks team, you know, is there other ways that they can be paid for? Is there other responsibilities they can have? We have to start to think about how we create nimble departments. We have 19 departments in the city. You know, we have to start to reimagine how our operations are to make it through this without taking our citizens through a roller coaster ride. And that's what I'll take the heat. Maybe we could communicate that more and communicate better or something, but that's what's the picture. What Ted just shared with you, and I was interested in seeing your reactions, that's the information we have every day.
Well, I'm happy to give you the heat. And when you have a Parks Board and former directors and unanimous consensus from council representing years and years and years and years of experience, all saying the same thing, it's baffling, truly baffling that you hold on to this position.
And as I share with you, through you, Chair, I share with you, I would be violating all my education and management experience to say, hey, you know, again, once we build this thing back up and the demand is there, there's no doubt about it. And once we've reached that point, it's like, hey, someone else needs to step in and start to carry this work. But because we've divided the programmatic stuff from the parks management stuff, that team is rolling. And so I don't know what staff you're referring to or whatever, but the staff they're rolling with terms of all our parks have been maintained all summer.
I would seriously question that.
I heard too.
And it's because they enjoy what they do and they take pride in the work that they do.
Yes.
But they're overrun with what they're doing, the responsibilities of their own work, plus the responsibilities of taking on the parks director's position. That's not their responsibility.
Who are you referring to?
I'm not going to call people out. That's not.
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying position. Are you talking about the front line?
The laborers
yes.
who are out over and through
Got
there.
you.
They're
Got
doing
you.
more work than that. They're not accustomed to doing that. They're doing a great job and they're getting help. That's not their job. That's not their responsibility.
Yeah, their job wasn't to sanitize parks equipment, but when COVID hit, we had to adjust what we were doing. And again, I'm monitoring this in terms of from a burnout standpoint, from a staffing standpoint. And again, I'm just asking for the opportunity to do my job. That's it. And once we reach that point, I'm committed to making sure that we.
But your job isn't to run the parks.
My job is to manage and operate the city, and I think that yeah.
Mr. Tolet.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, I think I agree with you. We are also have earned that respect and right for us to do our jobs. And we're 11 unified along with the Parks Board about returning our director. And maybe the demand, as you quoted, would be there if we could reopen all of these in a safe and effective way. And I think to your exact words, because of COVID, we need her more than ever to reopen. And whether we reopen it slow or faster, hopefully with her back, faster would be more beneficial. But things like the ice rink that are income producers, that are profit producers for the city, all this could have been completed back in June or July had she been in place. The funding, financial, we have that. We talked about that ad nauseum, how the funding is here for that. And I think we're jeopardizing potentially some of both our residents and businesses by not bringing her back. It's such a huge part of our community, and I'm asking, Mayor, again, we're unanimous in this, and we're asking. We don't have that hiring authority to bring her back. If we did, she'd be back. And we're asking you as a group, please bring her back.
I appreciate that, Councilman Tillett. Again, this is something I definitely will continue to deliberate on, and I appreciate your advocacy. And I appreciate that comment. That was thank you.
Ms. Keys.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I guess, we've been having this conversation for a very long time now. And for me, it feels like administration is not listening. And my big question is, yes, we've got lots of people doing multiple jobs right now. What's not getting done? I think there's a lot that's not getting done. When you ran your campaign, you were adamant about jobs and bringing in new businesses and bringing vitality to the downtown area. Our downtown is crumbling. The Parks and Rec Department worked. It is one of the reasons why my kids stayed in Elyria, so that their children could have the same opportunities that they had. And here we are, something that is not broken, you're trying to fix. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I'm baffled. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I guess to echo Mrs. Keys, the parks was working, the rec centers and all of that, it was working. Ms. Reardon got laid off because of COVID. And a financial need, and I get that, but we have money to pay her. We're paying her now, and she's sitting at home. So what would be, and we can't hire anyone for a year. So what would be so hard about bringing her back and letting her take the burden off of the people who are doing her job? The second part of my thought is, the problem I have is we're allowing possibly Horizon to use South Rec. We're allowing the skate club, the hockey clubs to use the ice rinks, but we're not allowing the citizens of Elyria who pay taxes the same right. So if we're gonna open, let me finish. If we're gonna open for select groups, then it's only fair and right that we open up the rec centers to, and I get the safety, I get COVID. This COVID is not a joke, I get it. But if we're gonna do it for one, my mama used to tell me, if you can't do it for everybody, you don't do it for nobody.
Yes, so thank you for that, Councilwoman Mitchell. I think that this is the same kind of false equivalency that happened when we first made the change, that people thought that Parks and Rec would be over forever, the parks wouldn't be maintained. And so I think that there's multiple conversations that are getting blended together. So we are planning to let the public utilize the facility. So the open skate is one of those gestures of making sure our public has access to our recreation. We want to start
Excuse me, Mayor, just for one second.
No, I'll just finish.
A lot of people don't skate.
I'll let you finish.
A lot of people don't skate.
I'll let you finish. I just would like to finish this point that we plan to then start allowing for rentals with guidance. But all of these things have nothing to do, that has nothing to do with having a director or not. That has to do with, can we do it safely? Can we do it right? Is it the right time to do it? And then part of the purpose of this town hall is to hear from the public of what do you feel comfortable doing? Because the worst thing we want to do, put all this programming in place and people don't feel safe engaging with it. So we want to make sure what the public wants, what Elyria residents want, that we're being responsive to that. And if they want a laundry list of things and say we're ready to go back, then yeah, I think it would be too big of a lift for us to carry right now with the staff we have. But we want to give the public and the residents the chance to make that call. And that's what part of the town hall is. That's what a part of the master plan and getting the feedback on is, what do the residents want?
So the request is that they want to bring a parks director back. In the conversations that happened on the 12th, are you going to bring her back?
So
because if that's what they want, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to the public. So the public is less. This is the equivalency I think council has created. The public wants their parks. The public wants their programming. They're agnostic about who, if it's Frank or Carrie or Derek. They just want. I want to be able to put my kids in volleyball because they're driving me crazy at home. That's what they're thinking. They're not thinking, oh, I want this person. That's your gig up here. That's the former employee's gig. That's not the general public is saying, I want my parks, I want my programming, and that's what we have to deliver on, and we have to be agnostic about how we deliver that.
Sure, and I understand that, Mayor, but that's not Mr. Firestein's position, and that's not Mr. Brubaker's position, is not to run Parks and Recs programs, and not to run, the facility. It's a Parks Director, and that's why we have it. That's her responsibility.
Well,
So
actually,
there-
it's a recreation supervisor's responsibility to oversee our recreation.
Well, that recreation supervisor is overseen by the director.
Yeah, for sure, but, yeah, for sure.
Mr. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. President, through you. Mr. Mayor, you also brought up this updated master plan, which is not looked upon favorably by council. It's not something that we were brought into the initial discussion. Monies were committed without checking with us. It was an amount that didn't have to come through council. The master plan that was done 5 years ago was very extensive, had a tremendous amount of forethought and care in crafting the surveys and analyzing the results. And it just doesn't make sense to us. I'm going to say for me, it doesn't make sense to me. Anybody else can weigh on if they want. It doesn't make sense to me that we need to update that master plan with another costly survey and one that's being rushed through without the care to make sure that what we're getting is really an accurate sense of what the community would want.
Thank you for that, Councilman Jesse. So first off, the concept to updating the master plan was from the former or the current Parks and Rec director. That was something that she suggested because we had completed so many of the master plan projects that it was time to update the master plan this year. So that was part of that discussion. The second piece is we're hiring the same firm that did it in the past, so the same care, and that person is the son of the person who founded the Parks and Rec department.
Which is my uncle.
So we're engaging folks who are going to do this right. We're not engaging. And then the last piece is that the last master plan, it wasn't all inclusive. It was definitely, it didn't include all residents in the feedback. Not enough. We didn't get enough feedback that was well representative of the whole city. So we want to make sure in this round we get every side of town engaged in that, not just one side of town. Every side of town engaged in that survey, giving their feedback of what they want to see for the future of their Parks and Rec.
Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you. So the last survey, if I remember correctly, was done by mail and over the internet, the city's website. So if people didn't engage, they didn't engage. So how do you propose to do it differently so that it is all-inclusive?
Yeah, no doubt. So part of my leadership style is grassroots, engaging with community. That's how I got here. That's what I've been doing throughout my career is making sure I've engaged people who have been left out of processes. So we plan to do the same thing of doing outreach specifically more. This isn't going to be the last town hall. We're going to continue to engage folks and other venues and ways to get feedback from those residents and leverage social media. I think we've done a good job revamping our social media, making sure we're engaging in that way. And then the hope would be work with city council folks and their wards to make sure their wards are giving feedback, because this is for the city. So hopefully you would all support your city's parks by making sure your wards are giving their feedback into this plan.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you. Carrie Reardon isn't here to explain her position, but I think you've really twisted what the spirit of that conversation was very early on in your tenure here. I'm quite certain that she did not intend to start over again with a master plan where you had to have expenditures. I think she wanted to go through the plan and look at what was accomplished and then start to prioritize. So I think it's an unfair perception to say that the director wanted to have this updated master plan with significant cost involved.
So through you, Chair, just for clarification, we had those quotes prior to her leaving the city. We worked to get Branstetter these quotes in before she left the city. So this was already in motion prior to then. So I want to make sure that's clear for the record.
It's unnecessary.
Thank you. All right. Reports of standing and special committees.
There are none.
Resolutions first reading.
There are none.
Resolutions second reading.
There are none.
Resolutions third reading.
There are none.
Ordinances first reading.
Sponsored by Community Development. An ordinance amending section 1131.02 codified ordinances of the city of Elyria, Ohio, known as the zoning ordinance, to rezone real property located between West River Road North and Griswold Road, Elyria, Ohio, from BG, Business General District, to a BAO, Business Automotive Oriented District.
I declare this ordinance has first reading public hearing Monday, November the 2nd, 2020, 7 p.m., council chambers.
An ordinance sponsored by Finance, amending ordinance number 2020-38, known as the 2020 Permanent Appropriations Ordinance, to change funds in various accounts.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2020-135. Sponsored by Utilities. An ordinance to enact a new Elyria Codified Ordinance, Section 937.20, to establish an alternative sewer consumption calculation for residential sanitary sewer account holders who receive water service from sources other than the Elyria Municipal Water Supply System.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second. Second by Mr. Sears. Any further discussion? Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2020-136. Sponsored by Utilities. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for tasers for the Elyria Police Department and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
I'm sorry, excuse me. Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tolet. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying...
Mr. President, I'm sorry. This taser ordinance is an emergency.
I'm sorry, Ms. Deary, can you say that again?
This taser ordinance is listed as an emergency.
Got you. Does the motion concur? For an emergency? Does the second?
I concur.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2020-137. That's all ordinances first reading.
Ordinances second reading.
There are none.
Ordinances third reading.
There are none.
Committee calls.
There are none. One moment.
Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
No, there was a joke.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Committee calls were not in the proper location. We found them. Community Development requests the Law Director, Safety Service Director, Engineer, Building Inspector on 10/13, streamed live 6 p.m., followed by joint with Finance and Council Chambers. All items referred. Finance requests the Mayor, Finance Director, Law Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on 10/13, following joint with CD. All referred items. Utilities, Safety, and Environment request Safety Service Director, Law Director, and Engineer on 10/14, streamed 6 p.m., Council Chambers, all items referred. And Strategic Planning requests Mayor, Safety Service Director, Finance Director, Law Director on 10/19, streamed live immediately following regular Council Chambers, all referred items.
Miscellaneous and unfinished business. I'd like to, I haven't spoken to you yet in regard to this, but the deal that went for with the Elyria City Schools for Franklin and the city and the CIC was finalized last week, so I thank everybody who supported that and all your help in those efforts for that. So the next step would be really, helping Ms. Rogers and to move forward with her next step and helping her build that building over and through there and help get her on the path over there to utilizing that. So I just want to kind of inform everybody in regards to that. Mr. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, obviously, we've been talking about finances a lot tonight, and this council is very aware of the challenges that our residents face. The topic has come up recently about sanitation rates, and even though we acknowledge that we're going to have some very challenging times in terms of balancing our budget with sanitation, I met with Finance Director Pileski the other day and Rodney I, Manager of Sanitation, and we made the commitment we will not be raising sanitation rates in 2021. We just want to go on record saying that. And along those same lines, we have upcoming delinquent utility bills. And while we all understood the need to not shut off people's water when the pandemic hit, and there were so many things that were uncertain, I would like to suggest that we lift that moratorium. Just to give you some facts and figures, right now we're $500,000 short on utility bills, and of that, $200,000 is sanitation. So as we're talking about challenges to the sanitation department, and we have $200,000 that we don't have at our disposal because of delinquent bills. Now, the place it becomes a little bit tricky is there still are people out there that have genuine need. We do have many agencies in the city and the county that could help them, but unfortunately, we also know for a fact that other people are taking advantage of this, realizing that their water's not going to get shut off, so they're just not paying, and they're very capable of paying. So it's unfortunate when people abuse a system that's set up to help the people that are most in need, but I'm certainly in favor of us lifting that and starting to notify people that their service will be shut off starting December 1st, and we just need to recoup some of that money. We're putting liens on their property, but that doesn't help us now.
Right.
We need to keep our fund more solvent. And then just two last things, back to parks. I did have a text from Director Reardon, who said to me the conversation she had with the mayor only dealt with capital projects in the master plan. So she was not in favor of starting over with a new master plan. And also, too, I guess I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Mayor, you said you did call the Parks and Rec director from the city of Aurora. Okay, all right, Thank you.
Okay.
And the other clarifying point is that we're not redoing the master plan, we're updating the master plan. So I think there's, again, some semantics there, but we're updating the master plan.
So a question to the law director then, as far as lifting the moratorium, is that something that is, I know that the state, I can't remember when the governor lifted that, was that in June or July of this?
Through you, Mr. President, the EPA had issued a moratorium. It expired in July. As it stands now, I would call it, it's been an informal moratorium. There is nothing formally in place. The city ordinance does call for shutoffs, and I would suggest that if council wishes to put a December 1st start date, that there would be legislation that would formalize that.
Sure, I would have that ready. Probably we'll refer that to whether that's got to go to finance to lift that, or what do you recommend for that?
Finance and or utilities.
What's that?
Finance and or utilities.
Yep, I would say that's fine. Is there anything else, Ms. Davis?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Tomorrow starts early voting.
Oh.
And with our streets being done, truly our residents appreciate it. And I want to give kudos to Preston Curtis, who responds to me when I need it, and that issue 6 is the reason so many streets have been done and in the process of being done, and we appreciate it. We appreciate the residents, and we ask you to please get out to vote for issue 6. Early voting starts tomorrow.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. It is important for us, please, citizens of Elyria. We appreciate everything that you've done, and, you know, we've been good stewards of the money. We said we were going to dedicate the money where it goes, so we really appreciate your efforts in the support of issue 6. Is there anything more to come before this? Any more miscellaneous business? No? If not,
Mr. Chairman, not hearing any additional business, move we adjourn.
moved by Mr. Baird. Second by Mr. Sierra. Any further discussion? Questions been called? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.